Now we'll implement our restaurant menu web service. As I am going to use entity framework, I am going to add reference to it. Just stop my running program. So I will go to manage NuGet reference, and I'm going to look for entity framework. Okay, I'm going to install the entity framework. I will accept the license agreement. Good. Also, I need one more open source utility called AutoMapper, as I'm going to use that to map between our domain and database entities. It is very useful utility. So let's install it. Now we got our references set. Yeah, let's say yes to all. Next we'll install AutoMapper. And have a look at how it works. It's quite useful. There's a getting started guide which shows you how to use and configure the AutoMapper. Anyway, I will be covering this in detail later. Okay, so now we have added our necessary references. Now let's create our domain and database entity. So I am going to add a new class. I'm going to name it restdomain.cs. So this will hold all the domain entity classes. To avoid the typing, I'm going to copy from previous code already I have written. I'm going to paste it here. So if you look at it, I have two enum structure, one to define the types of menus and another enum is to track the order state. These are simple POCO classes, so simple plain old CLR objects. So as you notice that I have suffixed them with entity just to avoid confusion with the GUI menu with it. So menu entity defines the menu and it has the key attributes like name, unit price and type of menu, whether it is a starter, and then the icon name, which during the client side we can show the picture of it. Menu item entity is again where basically it is similar to menu item, but it contains one extra attributes called the quantity, because whenever we order we need to specify that quantity. The order entity is basically collection of items. It has some key attributes like table number and state of the order, and the amount is a calculated field. I will show you how we calculate it later. So now that we added our domain entity classes, let's create in a data folder one more class to add our database entities. I'm going to name it REST data. Okay. So let's copy them. So again there are key entities like hotel menu, which is basically going to define the menu item. Also I have added some database specific attributes like is deleted, because we can do soft delete. Menu item entity is basically a normalized again entity. You see there are navigational properties like order and menu, because it has a relationship with hotel menu 1-to-1, and order has relationship 1-to-many with the hotel menu item. So the virtual keyword is important. Mainly it is the syntax used by entity framework, and it is enable us to do lazy loading. So menu order, the key attributes are again similar to order entity class we defined. So it is having table number, order state, and it has the navigational property items, which is a collection of hotel menu item. Again it is virtual. So now that we have defined our two classes defining both database and domain entities, let's basically enable the code first migration. Okay, to do that I already created a database by name RESTDB. We need to add the connection string, which again I'm going to copy to avoid typing into web.config. So we go to web.config and I can add that here. Okay, I'm missing. This should be all right. So this is my server name, and this is the name of the database. I'm using SQL authentication, so I'm using just user ID and the password. Okay, you can use integrated authentication, but you need to ensure that the user who is logging in has access to this database, because we are going to create few tables, so it needs some high level privileges. Normally I set the user as a DB owner, so that shouldn't be a problem. Okay, now the last thing we will do is define our data context class before we enable code migration. I'm going to use code first migration. Okay, so let's add our data context class. So I'm going to say restaurant menu context.cs. I'm going to replace it with the already created data context class. Now if you see here, there are some red underlines, so I need to just provide the references, and this also. So I add the references. You can see that the data context class is inheriting from DB contest, and we pass the name of the contest, and this should match what is defined in the web.config. So we need to ensure that it's correct, and as you can see, I think I introduced the config connection string it in the wrong web.config. I need to cut it from here and into the main web.config. Okay, and you can see that this is the restaurant menu contest which we created. Okay, so now if we go here, we have that, right? So now we can enable migration. So if you see here, there are DB set of hotel menu item and menu order. So this defines basically the tables which we are going to create, and whatever property name we give, by that name the table is created. Okay, so let's build it, because we don't want any errors before we enable code migration. Okay, so build is successful. So let's go to NuGet Package Manager console, and let's enable migrations. So this needs your solution to build without any errors. So it checks for existing database. So code first migration is enabled now for project restaurant menu service. And if you see, there is a migration folder and there is a configuration.cs file. Okay, so let's add our migration, and we can call rest menu changes, because we can, if we do any changes to our models, we can then add that migration, and then we can update our database. It's really a cool feature. I like it. So if you look at what it created is in the migration folder, it has created some class, and which basically has all the create table definitions. Okay, so now we can update the database. So that is done. So if we now go to SQL Server Management Studio, you can notice I can expand the table nodes and I have all the tables created. That's good. Okay, so now that we have enabled code first migration, and also we updated our database with the key database entities, now it's time to add our restaurant service. So let's add a new class, restaurant service. We'll inherit it by a service class. So let's make it public. the service for restaurant menu. Okay, now if you look at our use case, we have to place the orders here. So let's first define our method object post, and let's add order. This is our request TTO order. Let's call it request. Okay, we'll create this class and return new add order response, and we'll say order is equal to order request dot order. Okay, so let's define this class. So this is our request DTO, public class add order, and I specified before we need to mark it with the type of response it's going to return. So public class order response, public result order entity result get and set. Call it order because that's more logical name for it. And in the request we want to we'll set it to null, because in the request I want to pass order only, isn't it? So yeah, so that's correct. So order entity so we'll add a root attribute on method is post. Yeah, so that's the way it will be. Like the post request. Now to get the list of menus, we will define get method, and it is menus. I think it is better we create the request class first. It will have two public properties. So one is menu type, the another is search criteria, so they can search by name. Okay, because this is our, so let's public menus response. So let me just copy from so just it will return a list of menu item list. Okay, so let's say this is I return menu response, right? So we can now pass menus request return new menus response menu item list is equal to null. We'll set it up once we get our list of menus. So now that we have defined these two key methods which are exposed by our web service, and these two are enough for us to implement our use case. Now that we have defined two key APIs for our web service, let us implement restaurant repository design pattern in the next module. Thank you.